Hi guys, this video we're going to be talking about line relationships. That have to do with slopes. Of course, all of the stuff that we've been going over has been referring back to slopes. All right, so I'm just going to lead off with some examples and work through them so you kind of know what I'm talking about. So example number 1, I'm going to give you y equals 4x plus 7. And then I'm going to ask you to determine the slope if the line is parallel to the above line and if it's perpendicular to the above line. So we need to make sure we go over parallel and perpendicular to be able to figure out how we would be able to determine a slope that would be parallel to this line above or perpendicular to this line above. Two things you need to know. Parallel means same, and I write that very big, slope. So it means the line and its parallel line have the same exact slope. So think about two mountains. And a video in the past, I talked about slope being the slope of a mountain, how steep something is. So if they are parallel to each other, they have the same. If it is perpendicular, it has the inverse. Reciprocal is also another word. So it for like unmath people, it's the flipped opposite. Okay, so I'll show you what that means in a second, but I try to put it in words because I'm sure you're on this YouTube video because your teacher was talking in math terms and you had no clue what he or she was saying. So by me using bigger math terms like reciprocal or other big terms, it might be quite confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and use like real words that we would run into every day. So looking at the equation that they gave us, 4x plus 7, the slope that would make that parallel would be 4. Because remember, the slope is always located right next to the x value, and it is your m. And so if I want a parallel line, that means it's going to be the same slope. So it's the same number. That's the answer. And then if it's perpendicular, it's going to be a flipped fraction, and it's going to be the opposite sign. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write opposite sign right here just so you know what I'm talking about here. So currently, it looks like it is not a fraction. So people are like, but it's not a fraction. How do I flip it? If you need 4 to be a fraction, it is written as 4 over 1. Any number can be written as a fraction. Just put it over 1. So if I need to flip 4 over 1, I would flip it to 1 over 4. And then if I need to also make it the opposite sign, it currently in this example up here is a positive. So I am going to make it a negative. That is a perpendicular slope to the one that's listed in example 1. Okay, so let's do another one. I'm going to go ahead and change colors so we can decipher between. So example 2, I'm going to give you y equals negative 2/3 x plus 9. I want a parallel slope and I want a perpendicular slope. Okay, remember, a parallel slope means exactly the same slope that's in the problem. Slope is always located right next to your x value. So the exact same slope that I see is negative 2/3. That means the exact same sign and the exact same number. You just write the number down there. That is the parallel. All you're doing is copying that in on the line. Perpendicular means I'm going to flip that fraction. So what was on top is now on bottom, and what was on bottom is now on top, and I'm going to take the opposite sign. So currently, in that problem, it is the 2/3. I am going to write it as 3 over 2 because I have to flip it. In the problem, it is a negative, and the opposite of negative is positive, so I'm going to leave it as is because with no sign in front of it, it is understood to be a positive. That is the perpendicular slope. So parallel, quite easy. It's the same exact thing. Perpendicular, a little bit harder. You want to flip it and change the sign. A little trickier, we'll go to the next page here. A little bit trickier, maybe a lot trickier, is when they give it to you in this format. Okay? Problem is, you cannot do anything unless your problem is in y equals form. So as this example sits, x plus 6y equals 12, I can't do anything with it right now. I couldn't pick out the slope for you. I couldn't pick out the y-intercept. I couldn't pick out anything because this is not in y equals form. So what do we have to do first? Exactly. We have to solve this for y. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. You guys know how I like to drive my line down my equal sign. You do not have to do that. I'm going to start by moving the x. Positive x moves to a negative x. And I'm going to go ahead and move that to the other side. That leaves the left side with 6y. I cannot combine x and 12 because they don't both have x's. So what you do is you just write them next to each other. That's a negative x and a positive 12. That gets people a lot. They want to put 12x. You can't just mush those together. They don't both have an x. So you list them out separately. Then I'm going to divide by this 6 because I want y all by itself. Confusing part, people say, where do I divide that 6 by on the other side? It has to divide by everything. Okay, it has to divide by everything. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with y. Now, right here is an understood 1 in front of any letter. So if I divide that, I get negative 1, 6, x. And then 6 goes into 12 2 times. You see how I did that? The 1 over the 6 right here. And then I divided these two separately. So 2 separate steps there that you're doing. Now you have this in y equals. Now you could tell me what would be the parallel slope to this. I know you know it. What would it be? Perfect. It would be negative 1/6. Okay, negative 1/6 because that's exactly what's in the problem right here. What's next to the x value and y is by itself. So that is your slope. Parallel would be exactly the same. Now, if I ask you for perpendicular, it gets a little trickier, right? So remember, perpendicular, you have to flip the fraction. So now I'm going to have the 6 on the top, the 1 on the bottom. Your teacher may not like that because 6 over 1 is really just 6, right? So we'll just kind of simplify that out there. Now, you don't only flip it, you take the opposite sign. So in the problem, I have a negative here, which means I'm going to make it a positive. So you don't write anything in front because nothing in front is an understood positive. So remember, guys, you do have to change these equations into y equals form before you were able to identify if they're parallel or perpendicular. Parallel lines, if you need a visualization, are 2 lines that run side by side. They could also go this way as well. They could also go at a slant. Okay, it doesn't matter. They just are never going to intersect. They're going to have the same slope the entire time. A perpendicular line is going to intersect at a T. And so that they have a connection point. All right, so I hope this helps you identify parallel and perpendicular slopes when you are given an equation. If you have any ideas or any videos that you need me to film, please comment below or shoot us an email at carniestutoring@gmail.com. Thank you.